In October 1918, a large Arab army which was backed by the British conquered Iraq and Syria and kicked the Ottomans out of Damascus and Baghdad. The British had promised the Arabs led by King Faisal that they would help them establish an independent Arab state and would leave Syria and Iraq shortly after the state was established. However, this promise was not delivered. Shortly before the Ottoman army was defeated, the British and the French signed a secret agreement which stated that Iraq and Syria would be distributed amongst themselves. As a part of this agreement, the British would control Iraq and the French would be granted control over Syria. Therefore, shortly after King Faisal conquered Damascus with the help of the British, he was informed by the British that he must leave Syria and hand it over to the French. King Faisal obeyed the British and went to Iraq, where he was crowned the King of Iraq. However, the people of Syria were furious and refused to allow their land to be handed over to the French. The French army faced fierce resistance from the people of Syria who revolted against the colonial invaders. The French invaded Syria in July 1920. Ethnic groups such as Arabs, Kurds, and Circassians all united and revolted against the French invaders. Upon their entry into Syria, the French faced particularly fierce resistance from the Kurdish population of northern Syria. The French entered northern Syria from southeastern Turkey. When trains filled with French troops would pass through the Kurdish mountains of northern Syria, many of them would be ambushed and attacked by Kurdish tribes and resistance groups. One of the greatest Kurdish leaders who resisted the French invasion of Syria was a religious leader known as Hajji Hannan Ismail. Hajji Hannan united many Kurdish tribes under one banner of resistance and waged a holy war against the French. The well-armed French army was able to conquer the whole of Syria within just a few months, and most of the resistance was quickly crushed. However, many of the northern Kurdish regions remained volatile and difficult to control. Hajji Hannan resisted the French invaders for longer than any other Kurdish leader. By the year 1923, most Kurdish leaders had surrendered to the French. However, Hajji Hannan refused to submit and kept French forces out of his territory. Hajji Hannan Ismail was an Islamic leader who was influential in the Kurdish region of Afrin, which is located near the border with Turkey. Shortly after the French invasion, Sheikh Ismail united many Kurdish tribes and formed a resistance army which carried out attacks on French garrisons and seized their weapons after killing and capturing French soldiers. The French managed to conquer many Kurdish areas by turning Kurds and Arabs against each other and by convincing Kurds that they would no longer be discriminated against by Arabs in Damascus. As a result, many Kurdish leaders such as Jalalat Ali Badr Khan collaborated with the French. However, Hajji Hannan refused to work with the French and also supported the Arab rebels in the south of Syria. Within just a few weeks, the army of Hajji Hannan managed to liberate the region of Afrin and kicked all French troops out of the region. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk tried to take advantage of the successful anti-French rebellion of Hajji Hannan, and he attempted to integrate the region of Afrin into the newly formed Republic of Turkey. Therefore, Ataturk invited Hajji Hannan to Ankara in order to convince Hajji Hannan to join Turkey. After meeting Ataturk, Hajji Hannan refused to join Turkey because of Ataturk's anti-religious and pro-Western policies. Hajji Hannan was strongly against Ataturk because he had abolished the caliphate and replaced it with a nationalist state. Therefore, Hajji Hannan left Ankara and made his way back to Syria. However, on the way back, he was arrested by Turkish forces and imprisoned in the Gaziantep jail. After spending 6 months in the Turkish jail, Hajji Hannan managed to escape with the help of a Kurdish prison officer, and he made his way back into Syria. Upon his return to Afrin in 1923, Hajji Hannan continued to resist French occupation forces. The region controlled by Hajji Hannan could never be penetrated by the French army. In 1944, the French Chancellor visited Hajji Hannan to try and agree a ceasefire and a truce. After the Chancellor tried to shake Hajji Hannan's hand, Hajji Hannan refused to shake his hand and stated, "If I shake your hand, I will become an infidel." Hajji Hannan refused to stop fighting the French and continued to fight them until they left Syria. After the French withdrawal from Syria, Hajji Hannan continued to resist the borders which were left behind by French and British colonialism. Therefore, Hajji Hannan would regularly cross the border between Turkey and Syria, as he had many family members in Turkey and owned large amounts of land and properties on the other side of the border. Another negative effect of European colonialism that was left behind was the State of Israel, which was built on the stolen land of millions of Arabs in Palestine. Hajji Hannan was well aware of the situation in Palestine, and in 1948, Hajji Hannan gathered a force of Kurdish volunteers to join the Arab resistance against the Zionist invaders. Hajji Hannan sent 700 Kurdish fighters to Palestine to fight the Israelis. Many of Hajji Hannan's Kurdish volunteers died fighting against the Zionist military occupation. Hajji Hannan continued to defy borders and government authority until his death. Hajji Hannan died in the year 1966 on the Turkish side of the border.